Okay, let's get into it. Today we're doing a deep dive on the really curious case of Johnny Hates Jazz,
Hmm.
a band whose name is just one of the great musical ironies of the 80s.
It really is. And their biggest hit, Shattered Dreams,
Hmm.
in a way, it actually kind of signaled the implosion of the group that was about to happen.
It's such a classic music story, but it goes so much deeper than just that polished synth pop sound they're famous for.
Right. And I think that's our mission today. We're going to trace this whole dramatic arc.
The whole thing.
Yeah, how a band that was, built on this really deep musical lineage, how they became global stars practically overnight.
And then why they just fractured completely, right at their absolute peak.
And the part I find amazing, how they managed that stunning reconciliation after, 22 years of total silence.
22 years, which led to this whole new purpose-driven second act for them.
Exactly.
And when we talk about that initial success, we're not just talking about a flash in the pan. This was genuine global impact.
Oh, for sure. Their debut album, Turn Back the Clock.
Seminal album.
It hit #1 in the UK, went triple platinum, and ended up selling, I think, 4 million copies worldwide.
That is just a massive footprint for a debut.
It's huge. And that entire reach was basically powered by one song, Shattered Dreams.
Right.
And just to give you a sense of how much that song has stuck around, it hit #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the U.S.
Which is already a huge achievement.
But the truly staggering stat is the airplay. In the U.S. alone, that one song has been played on the radio over 3.7 million times.
Wow, 3.7 million.
Yeah. So, statistically, if you've lived in the U.S. for the last few decades, you have heard that song a lot. It's embedded in the culture now.
Okay, so let's peel back that first layer of irony, which is frankly the funniest part of this whole story, the name.
The name. Johnny Hates Jazz.
It just sounds like a declaration of war against smooth music, like an anti-establishment statement.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But the real story is,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's way more mundane.
Yeah.
And funnier. The name just came from a friend of theirs. A mutual friend who genuinely, personally, could not stand jazz.
That's it.
That's it. They just thought it sounded catchy for the band.
So you set yourself up as the antidote to jazz, and then you become this massive pop phenomenon.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting, because that defiant name immediately runs headfirst into reality when you're trying to get a record deal.
Oh, the clash is just magnificent. So they get signed by Virgin Records.
Right. But only after they play an acoustic showcase at, of all places, Ronnie Scott's in London.
The legendary hallowed jazz club.
The world-famous jazz club.
Yeah.
So the band called Johnny Hates Jazz literally gets their big break playing in a temple of jazz.
You can't make it up. But it suggests that Virgin Records, they saw something beyond just a novelty name. They saw real musicianship.
They saw sophistication, which brings us to the ultimate, double-layered irony of their whole legacy. It's unavoidable. Their music, this blend of electronic production and these really melodic, restrained instruments, it became known as sophisti-pop.
Right.
And that super polished sound is now widely seen as a key foundational influence on the entire smooth jazz genre that exploded later on.
So they basically created the music their name was rejecting.
Exactly. And once you look into the musical DNA of the core guys, Clark Datchler and Mike Most, you kind of get why that sophistication was so natural for them.
Yeah, these were not kids fresh out of a garage band.
Far from it. Clark Datchler comes from this incredibly high-pressure musical lineage. His dad, Fred Datchler, was a professional jazz musician.
And not just any musician. He was in 2 chart-topping British groups from the 50s and 60s.
First, the Stargazers, who were the first British group ever to have a #1 hit on the UK chart.
Okay, so that's a high bar.
A very high bar.
Yeah.
And then later, with the Polka Dots, he was singing backing vocals for, everyone. Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, the Beatles, Peggy Lee.
Wow. So that's like having a masterclass in pop and jazz history just running in your blood.
It sets the bar impossibly high. And then you have Mike Most, who also had music in his background. His mom was a singer in a group called the Cactus Kids.
But Mike's own path was more on the technical side, right?
Yeah, he became an elite industry guy, a really highly regarded recording engineer.
And his resume is just staggering. He worked with Pink Floyd,
The Police,
Duran Duran. So when these two finally connect, you've got this really potent mix.
You have Clark Datchler, who's steeped in melody and composition from this jazz family, and then Mike Most, who knows exactly how to build a massive, polished soundscape from his time with these rock and synth titans.
And their first connection was all down to the legendary RAK Records boss, Mickie Most.
Yeah, Most engineered it. Clark was signed solo to RAK, and Most was the one who suggested he work with Mike, who was an engineer at RAK Studios. And that's really the incubator for the band, which formed around '86.
But even before that, Datchler was moving in some pretty heavy circles. He was the lead singer for a band called Hot Club.
And the lineup for that band.
It included Glenn Matlock of the Sex Pistols and James Stevenson from Gene Loves Jezebel. So he's mingling with punk and goth rock legends right before launching the perfect pop record.
That background, all of it, the musical depth, the high-level production skill, the unexpected connections, it all feeds into their biggest song.
Let's talk about the engine of all their fame, Shattered Dreams. We know Clark Datchler wrote it super quickly, just in his parents' living room.
Right, with a really simple setup. An upright piano, a little 4-track Porta-Studio, a basic drum machine, and a keyboard. It was total DIY brilliance.
And his dad heard it.
Yeah, his dad, Fred, walked in, heard the rough cut, and just knew instantly. He apparently told Clark, "I think you found it. That's the one."
That must have been incredible validation coming from him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the rest of the industry, they didn't agree. Which brings us to that incredible story about Mickie Most.
The king of hitmakers. He was so sure Shattered Dreams wouldn't be a hit, he made a literal public bet with them.
He declared out loud that if the song reached the UK Top 20, he would stand stark naked in the window of Harrods or Selfridges.
Two of London's most famous department stores for a whole day.
A whole day.
Ah.
A naked legend in a flagship store window. It just shows you the kind of commercial skepticism they were up against.
And the song didn't just scrape into the top 20. It climbed for 13 weeks and peaked at number 5.
Number 5 in the UK.
So what happened? Did the world get a full view of Mickie Most?
Well, thankfully for London shoppers, they let him off the hook. Datchler said that Most actually became one of their biggest supporters later, so they didn't, force the issue.
But imagine having that hanging over your breakthrough hit. It's the ultimate pressure.
For sure. And the lyrics themselves reflected a kind of tension. Most people just hear it as a classic breakup song, which it was, on the surface.
But Datchler had a much bigger idea in mind.
Yeah, he intended it to be about broader things like environmental or economic or even philosophical shattered dreams that humanity experiences. That juxtaposition, serious subject set to bright up-tempo music, that's the core of sophisti-pop.
Accessible but smart.
Exactly.
And the production of the track was just as rebellious in its own way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to remember the mid-'80s, everything was huge, gated ambient drums.
Phil Collins, arena rock, it was all about sounding massive.
But Mike Nacito and Calvin Hayes, they went completely against that trend. They purposely engineered the drums on Shattered Dreams to sound, in their words, tiny.
Just restrained and refined. But surely that was a huge commercial gamble at the time. Why shrink the drums?
It was a very calculated artistic choice. They knew Clark Datchler had this beautiful pop voice, full of character, but it wasn't a huge booming instrument that could cut through a wall of sound.
So by pulling the drums back,
they gave his vocals so much more space and prominence in the mix. That restraint is what defined their sound. It was smooth, it was polished, and it always put the melody in the vocal first.
it really speaks to the confidence they had in the song and his voice.
And it all came together fast. About 3 days to record the core track, though Datchler apparently said the bass line was the last tricky piece to nail down.
So once Shattered Dreams is this global smash, the real pressure hits. The follow-up.
The second single, I Don't Want to Be a Hero, was Datchler's personal favorite, and it carried another really strong message. It was an explicit anti-war anthem.
A message he felt he just had to convey. But it's the next song, the album's title track, Turn Back the Clock, where we see the cracks starting to form.
Right, that song had some serious guest talent. They had Kim Wilde on backing vocals,
Another RAK artist.
and strings arranged by the brilliant Ann Dudley from Art of Noise and ABC.
But the problem was timing, or a lack of it. They were so busy they hadn't given Ann Dudley enough advance notice for the arrangement.
So when they all get into the studio to record the live strings, it's just a pressure cooker. Datchler and Nacito heard the arrangement for the very first time as it was being recorded.
Oh, that's stressful.
Terribly. There were musical clashes, notes that didn't quite fit, and the stress level was just through the roof. It apparently got so bad that one of the band members ended up shouting a note change down the talkback mic directly at Dudley.
Oof. I read that she later called it one of the worst and most difficult sessions she'd ever had.
It's a classic case of the 80s pop machine just running over basic creative communication.
They did mend fences, right?
They did. Datchler and Nocito later said they had to build a bridge with her after that day, and it worked. She came back years later to score strings for their reunion album. The artistic respect won out in the end.
Before that reunion, though, they had to navigate the peak of their initial run and its stunning implosion. And speaking of peaks, we have to talk about their link to Hollywood royalty.
Ah, yes. The David Fincher connection.
The David Fincher. In late '87, the band made 2 music videos with this young director who was, well, on his way to becoming an auteur.
He directed the alternative U.S. video for Shattered Dreams, the black and white one that Datchler preferred, and also the video for Heart of Gold.
And this was Fincher in his transitional phase?
Yeah, you could call it that. He was just past his mullet era, directing videos for Loverboy and Rick Springfield.
All right.
But this was right before he hit that major stride with Madonna's Vogue and Billy Idol's Cradle of Love. You can already see that dark, stylistic precision in the Johnny Hates Jazz videos.
So here they are. They're platinum sellers. They're working with future Hollywood legends. And at the absolute height of all that
The
fame,
wheels come entirely off.
it was so immediate and brutal.
Clark Datchler just decided to leave at the end of 1988. He argued that the interpersonal differences were simply insurmountable. The sources all say the parting was traumatic.
And what followed was just one of the most dramatic professional silences in pop history.
A complete 22-year communication blackout between Datchler and Nocito, who had been such good friends.
Nothing. No calls, no emails, no texts.
Nothing. They just vanished from each other's lives. Nocito recalled feeling completely heartbroken, saying he felt Datchler was strangling the golden goose.
And that kind of cold, severe silence, it makes the failure of the friendship seem even bigger than the failure of the band.
For sure. And that silence forced Datchler onto this completely different and really unexpected solo path,
He moved to Amsterdam, then spent most of the '90s at Peter Gabriel's Real World Studios.
where he taught himself to play the bouzouki. I mean, that is a serious detour from electric synth pop.
It was more than a musical pivot, it was a philosophical one. He eventually moves to the high mountain desert in the U.S., builds a solar-powered studio,
And becomes intensely environmentally aware. He starts studying indigenous philosophy.
and all of that deep environmental and philosophical work, it completely transformed his songwriting. It led to his 2007 album, Tomorrow.
And in 2008, that dedication got him some serious recognition. He received the first Green Music Award in Berlin.
Putting him on a list of laureates alongside people like Elon Musk and Bob Geldof.
Yeah, this wasn't just a synth pop star going green. This was a deep commitment that earned him global acknowledgement. It showed how the shattered dreams of the 80s led him to a much deeper, more purposeful kind of art.
And then finally the reconciliation, 2009.
It was Clark who initiated it. He realized he missed his friend, so he got Nocito's number from his brother and just called him after 22 years.
And they met for lunch at a pasta place in Cambridge.
And both of them describe it as this classic moment where, despite all the time and the trauma of the split, it felt like no time had passed at all. The friendship was still there, just buried,
And that rekindled friendship led directly to their second act as a band.
resulting in the albums Magnetized in 2013 and Wide Awake in 2020.
But even that second act was immediately hit by a personal catastrophe.
Right. Shortly after Magnetized was released, Clark Datchler was diagnosed with a rare form of stomach cancer. He had severe internal bleeding. It had to halt everything.
And that recovery seems to have given him this profound new perspective. He said that coming face to face with the door from life to death made him realize life was too short to be trivial.
He says now he's deeply loath to write songs that don't have some kind of meaning or purpose, and that commitment to depth is the central pillar of their work today.
It also led him to some other really high-profile collaborations. He co-wrote a lot of the music for Mike Rutherford's band, Mike plus the Mechanic.
On their last 2 albums, yeah.
Wow.
Let Me Fly and Out of the Blue.
Yeah.
Working with the Genesis legend.
So when you look at the whole story, what does it all mean? The legacy of Johnny Hates Jazz is just. It's defined by these profound paradoxes.
Totally. A band named for rejecting jazz who accidentally helped pioneer smooth jazz.
They created these global smash hits, but
Yeah.
their sophisticated art was ultimately undone by just basic human incompatibility.
Their story is such a powerful reminder that the art that really lasts It often comes from the crucible of personal conflict. They went from being accidental pop stars to, surviving friends, making music rooted in deep purpose.
Realizing that sometimes those initial shattered dreams are the only way to find a truly meaningful message.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, though. Think about the music or the art that really stays with you. How much of that profound, lasting work was only possible because the creators themselves had to face their own version of a shattered dream? A professional collapse or coming face to face with mortality and needing to transform their perspective from something trivial to something deeply purposeful.